Shalom. My name is Adam, and I welcome you to the parable of the Vineyard. Every day, Yahweh is waking up a remnant, a group of people who are coming out of deceptions, realizing our walk is to consist of faith and obedience to his righteous commands. Each week, we read through and examine a portion of the Torah, allowing the Spirit of the Most High to guide, teach, and open our eyes and ears to the wondrous matters out of his law. Join us as we seek to be refined by his word, preparing ourselves for the return of our King of Kings, being faithful and obedient, walking in his way, truth, and life. Shabbat Shalom and welcome back, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Parable of the Vineyard YouTube live stream of our Torah portion reading. My name is Adam, your host, and I welcome you. We're in the book of Exodus, and we're at week 13, Shemot. And I have to tell you, if I can be honest, this is my favorite Torah portion out of all of them. This is going to be a long one. If you were with me last year, I think this was 3 hours. I went through it again through my notes, and I did try to shave it down a little bit because I thought that might be a little long for a Torah portion, but there's so much information on this one that it's just my favorite. I think the book of Exodus is just one of my favorites in the Torah in general. Just the whole Exodus story, coming out of Egypt, coming out of its wicked ways, the testing in the wilderness, saved by the blood of the Lamb. It has so many parallels with our walk now and, of course, in the end times. A lot of people have said that the book of Revelation is the book of Exodus refreshed or all over again from a new perspective. And so what I love about this Torah portion is, well, in the book of chapter 50 of Genesis to chapter 1 in Exodus, it's like a 200-year span, but it's just like a few verses because it's like Joseph dies, and then they're in Egypt, and then they're in slavery. Like, well, how did that happen? They just tripped and fell and they're in slavery. Like, how did that actually happen? How did that go down? I want the details. We're going to get the details tonight. There's a lot of details. There's a lot of stories. What about Moses? All of a sudden he's born and then all of a sudden he's a grown man. What happened in between? Are there any more details written down for us? Yes, there's a lot. Let's pray before we begin. Father, Yahweh, we come before you and bless you and praise you in Yahusha's name. We thank you, Father, for opening our eyes to the goodness of your Torah through your Son, Yahusha, and the salvation we receive by believing, confessing that he is the King of Kings, the Adonai of Adonim, our Messiah, our Mashiach, Father. We thank you for opening our eyes to your goodness of your commandments, your Torah, your Shabbats, your feast days, and any way that we can possibly be obedient to you because we love you and we want to do what's pleasing in your sight. So give us understanding, Father, that we may live. Teach us your statutes. Let us learn righteousness, Father. We pray that any eyes and ears that would be open today through this study, that we all may grow together, Father, in your goodness and to bear fruit of your Torah in spirit and truth. In Yahusha's name, amen, hallelujah, Shabbat shalom. For those of you that are watching this near this release, this April will be Passover. A lot of you had heard that we had a very fruitful Sukkot gathering in Lebanon, Missouri. We rented out a 285-acre plot of land, private campground. And it was amazing. There was about 400 of us, and we just had a great time. And guess what? We're going to do it again for Pesach. Yeah, that's right. We're going to camp out for like 8 days. So mark your calendars. April 15th, check in the morning through April 24th. We're going to be getting together in Lebanon, Missouri for Passover. Passover on the calendar we celebrate will be the evening of the 16th of April. It'll be going through through that whole week. So if you're interested, I'll give you details at the end of this Torah portion. So let's get started without any more delay. Let's get to Shemot. Again, my favorite Torah portion because of all the awesome details. But before we do that, shofar, so good. right, now that you're nice and awake, let's get started. We're going to be reading Exodus chapter 1. We're going to be reading from the Sefer version. A lot of cross-referencing today with the Aramaic version, the Targums, and the book of Yashar. You'll see how many amazing confirmations of that book we get through this one Torah portion alone. So here we go. Book of Exodus, chapter 1, verse 1. Now, these are the names of the children of Yashar, which came into Mitzrayim. Every man in his household came with Yaakov. Reuben, Shimon, Levi, Yehudah, Yissachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Yaakov were 70 souls, for Joseph was in Mitzrayim already. And Joseph died, and all his brethren in all that generation. And all the children of Yashar were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them. Now there arose up a new king over Mitzrayim, which knew not Joseph. And he said unto his people, Behold, the people of the children of Yashar are more and mightier than we. Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply. And it come to pass that when there falls out any war, they join also unto our enemies, and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land. Therefore they did set over them taskmasters, to afflict them with their burdens. And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, and Pithom, and Ramesses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because of the children of Yashar. And the Mitzrayim made the children of Yashar to serve with rigor, and they made their lives bitter with hard bondage in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them to serve was with rigor. And the king of Mitzrayim spoke to the Ivri midwives, the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah, and this is their Egyptian names. We will find out through two sources that this is Miriam and Jochebed, Moses' mom and sister. And he said, When you do the office of a midwife to the Ivrite woman, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, you shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But the midwives feared Elohim, and did not as the king of Mitzrayim had commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Mitzrayim called for the midwives, and said unto them, Why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto Pharaoh, Because the Ivrite women are not as the Mitzrite women, for they are lively, and are delivered before the midwives are come unto them. Therefore Elohim dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and waxed very mighty. And it came to pass, because the midwives feared Elohim, that he made them houses. We're going to learn what that means in a little bit. And Pharaoh had charged all his people, saying, Every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter shall ye save alive. So, a lot happened there. That's like a 200-year span. Let's get all the details. What do you say? Let's dive into this together. So that escalated quickly, right? Let's read how this went down. Book of Yashar, chapter 58. And it came to pass in the 32nd year of the Israelites going down to Egypt, that is in the 71st year of the life of Joseph, in that year died Pharaoh king of Egypt, and Magron his son reigned in his stead. And Pharaoh commanded Joseph before his death to be a father to his son, and that Magron should be under the care of Joseph and under his counsel. And all Egypt consented to this thing, that Joseph should be king over them, for all the Egyptians loved Joseph as he have heretofore. Only Magron, the son of Pharaoh, sat upon his father's throne, and he became king in those days in his father's stead. Magron was 41 years old when he began to reign, and 40 years he reigned in Egypt. And all Egypt called his name Pharaoh, after the name of his father, as it was their custom to do in Egypt to every king that reigned over them. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh reigned in his father's stead, he placed the laws of Egypt and all the affairs of government in the hand of Joseph, and as his father had commanded him. And Joseph became king over Egypt, for he superintended over all Egypt, and all Egypt was under his care and under his counsel. For all Egypt inclined to Joseph after the death of Pharaoh, and they loved him exceedingly to reign over them. But there were some people amongst them who did not like him, saying, No stranger shall reign over us. Still, so this started planting the seed. Still, the whole government of Egypt devolved in those days under Joseph after the death of Pharaoh, he being the regulator, doing as he liked throughout the land without anyone interfering. Now, let's jump down to verse 28. The rest of this is repeated. Actually, some of this here is like some of the wars that Joseph fought with the children of Esau and subdued them. ended up taking Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the firstborn of Esau, in captivity. So down in verse 28, but from that day forward, the children of Esau hated the sons of Jacob. The hatred and enmity were very strong between them in those days unto this day. I meant to just actually read verse 30, sorry. And Joseph, king of Egypt, and his brethren, and all the children of Israel dwelt securely in Egypt in those days, together with all the children of Joseph and his brethren, having no hindrance or evil accident. And the land of Egypt was at that time at rest from war in the days of Joseph and his brethren. What I meant to do is chapter 59, verse 28, verses 1 through 27, repeat Genesis 50 and Exodus 1. So Yashar 59:28. And it came to pass, after the death of Joseph, all the Egyptians began in those days to rule over the children of Israel. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who reigned in his father's stead, took all the laws of Egypt and conducted the whole government of Egypt under his counsel, and he reigned securely over his people. So after the death of Joseph, right, his sons didn't continue kingship. Egypt took back control of it afterwards. All right, so chapter 60 of Yashar, we're going to skip. This is the history of Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau. This is the history of Angeas, the king of Africa, and some of the wars and back and forth. So we're going to go to the next chapter. We're going to go to 61 of Yashar. We're going to read verses 1 through 17. And it came to pass at the time that the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, commanded all his people to make for him a strong palace in Egypt, because all these wars were going on. So he's like, let me make a strong palace here in Egypt. And he also commanded the sons of Jacob to assist the Egyptians in the building, and the Egyptians made a beautiful and elegant palace for a royal habitation. And he dwelt thereon, and he renewed his government and reigned securely. And Zebulun, the son of Jacob, died in that year. That is the 72nd year of the going down of the Israelites to Egypt. And Zebulun died 114 years old, and was put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. And the 75th year died his brother Shimon. He was 120 years old at his death, and he was also put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. And Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, captain of the host of Angeas, king of Dinhaba, was still daily enticing Angeas to prepare for battle to fight with the sons of Jacob. So in the previous chapter, he kept coming to Angeas. He's like, come on, let's fight him. And Angeas was like, no, I heard of their valor. Ain't no way it's happening. And Angeas was unwilling to do this thing, for his servants had related to him all the might of the sons of Jacob, what they had done unto them in their battle with the children of Esau. And Zepho was in those days daily enticing Angeas to fight with the sons of Jacob in those days. And after some time Angeas hearkened to the words of Zepho, and consented to him to fight with the sons of Jacob in Egypt. And Angeas got all his people in order, a people numerous as the sand which is upon the seashore. And he formed his resolution to go to Egypt to battle. And amongst the servants of Angeas was a youth 15 years old. Balaam, the son of Beor, was his name. You guys have heard that name before. And the youth was very wise and understood the art of witchcraft. And Angeas said unto Balaam, conjure for us, I pray you, with the witchcraft, that we may know who will prevail in this battle to which we are now proceeding. And Balaam ordered that they should bring him wax, and he made thereof the likeness of chariots and horsemen, representing the armies of Angeas and the army of Egypt. And he put them in the cunningly prepared waters that he had for that purpose. And he took in his hand the boughs of myrtle trees, and he exercised his cunning, and he joined them over the waters. And there appeared unto him in the waters the resembling images of the host of Angeas, falling before the resembling images of the Egyptians and the sons of Jacob. And Balaam told these things to Angeas, and Angeas despaired, and did not arm himself to go down to Egypt to battle, and he remained in his city. And when Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, saw that Angeas despaired of going forth to battle with the Egyptians, Zepho fled from Angeas from Africa, and he went and came into Chittim. And all the people of Chittim received him with great honor, and they hired him to fight their battles all the days. And Zepho became exceedingly rich in those days. And the troops of the king of Africa still spread themselves in those days. And the children of Chittim assembled and went to Mount Huptizia on account of the troops of Angeas, king of Africa, who were advancing upon them. And it was one day that Zepho lost a young heifer, and he went to seek it, and he heard it lowing round about the mountain. And Zepho went, and he saw, and behold, there was a large cave at the bottom of the mountain, and there was a great stone there at the entrance of the cave. And Zepho split the stone, and he came into the cave, and he looked, and behold, a large animal was devouring the ox. From the middle upward it resembled a man, and from the middle downward it resembled an animal. So some of those chimera creatures, some of those legendary creatures that have been told throughout the ages. And Zepho rose up against the animal and slew it with his swords. And the inhabitants of Chittim heard this thing, and they rejoiced exceedingly. And they said, "What shall we do unto this man who has slain this animal and devoured our cattle?" We saw this actually also in a previous Torah portion when we were going over Genesis 36. We saw it in the lineage of Esau, it talked about a certain man that saw the Yamim, and it talked about the story of these half-breed, half-man, half-animal creatures that rode away with or stole all their donkeys. All right, so the rest of this chapter is about Jania, the queen that went down to Africa. So we'll skip that one. Interesting story, but not really relevant. Chapter 62, we're going to read verses 1 through 5 and then 23 through 24. Joshua 62. In that year, being the 79th year of the Israelites going down to Egypt, died Reuben, the son of Jacob, in the land of Egypt. Reuben was 125 years old when he died, and they put him into a coffin, and he was given into the hands of the children. And the 80th year died his brother Dan. He was 120 years at his death, and he was also put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. And then that year died Husham, king of Edom, and after him reigned Hadad, the son of Bedad, for 35 years. And in the 81st year died Issachar, the son of Jacob, in Egypt, and Issachar was 122 years old at his death. And he was put into a coffin in Egypt and given into the hands of his children. And in the 82nd year died Asher, his brother. He was 123 years old at his death, and he was placed into a coffin in Egypt and given into the hands of his children. And in the 83rd year died Gad, and he was 125 years old at his death, and he was put into a coffin in Egypt and given into the hands of his children. We're going to drop down to verses 23 through 24. And it came to pass that time Judah, son of Jacob, died in Egypt in the 86th year of Jacob's going down to Egypt. And Judah was 129 years old at his death, and they embalmed him and put him into a coffin, and he was given into the hands of his children. And in the 89th year died Naphtali. He was 132 years old and was put into a coffin and given into the hands of his children. We're going to skip the rest of this. This is just Moab versus Midian wars. Not relevant to our study today, but still a cool read. Yashar 63 verses 1 through 9. And in the 93rd year died Levi, the son of Jacob, in Egypt. And Levi was 137 years old when he died. And they put him into a coffin, and he was given into the hands of his children. And it came to pass, after the death of Levi, when all Egypt saw that the sons of Jacob, the brethren of Joseph, were dead, all the Egyptians began to afflict the children of Jacob. So it's interesting that this generation was alive and kept everything preserved, the righteous generation, and then they all died off, and then came the affliction. It reminds you what's said in Isaiah 57 or 58, that the righteous perishes and no man takes it to heart, but they don't know that the righteous is taken away before the evil to come. Also, what we saw, I think it was Yashar 4, kind of explained Genesis a little better, that all of Noah's fathers and grandfathers, they all died before the flood came, so that it was kind of mercy upon them, so they wouldn't have to see the evil. So they began to afflict the children of Jacob and to embitter their lives from that day unto the day of their going forth from Egypt. And they took from their hands all the vineyards and fields which Joseph had given unto them, and all the elegant houses in which the people of Israel lived, and all the fat of Egypt the Egyptians took from the sons of Jacob in those days. And the hand of all of Egypt became more grievous in those days against the children of Israel, and the Egyptians injured the Israelites until the children of Israel were wearied of their lives on account of the Egyptians. And it came to pass in those days, in the 102nd year of Israel's going down to Egypt, that Pharaoh king of Egypt died, and Melol his son reigned in his stead, and all the mighty men of Egypt and all that generation which knew Joseph and his brethren died in those days. And another generation rose up in their stead, which had not known the sons of Jacob, and all the good which they had done unto them, and all their might in Egypt. Therefore all Egypt began from that day forth to embitter the lives of the sons of Jacob, and to afflict them with all manner of hard labor, because they had not known their ancestors, who had delivered them in the days of the famine. And this was also from Yahweh for the children of Israel, to benefit them in their latter days, in order that all the children of Israel might know Yahweh their Elohim. We see this very parallel, and this is a very interesting point to glean in this Torah portion, that this affliction, and this is really all throughout this Torah portion, is the affliction of his people, then came salvation. Psalm 119:71, it is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. How many of us can look back at the hard times and the trials and the tests, and while they were really painful, while we were going through them, and it was hard, that We learned lessons through them and became, well, closer to Yah, strong in our walk through them. So that's why it says here, all right, this hard labor, this affliction, this was from Yahuwah for the children of Israel to benefit them in their latter days, in order that all the children of Israel might know Yahweh their Elohim. Personally, I came to know Yah, really know him, even though I heard about him all my childhood. I didn't really know him until I came across hard times. So I can say here, as a witness, it was good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn his statutes and know him. Hebrews 12:5-8. Have you forgotten the exhortation that addresses you as sons? This is, have you forgot the proverb? My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of Yahweh, nor be weary when reproved by him. For Yahweh disciplines the ones he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives. It is for discipline that you have to endure. Elohim is treating you as sons, for what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate or bastards, and not sons. For the moment, all discipline seems painful rather than pleasant, but later it yields the peaceable fruit of righteousness to those who have been trained by it. It's not always about getting out of the furnace. It's about being purified while in the furnace. It's another passage it reminds me of. I didn't put this in the notes, but it reminds me of Sirach 2. My son. Sirach is Ecclesiasticus, located, not Ecclesiastes, but Ecclesiasticus in the 1611 KJV Apocrypha section. My son, if you come forward to serve Yahweh, prepare yourself for tempting or trials or testing. Set your heart right and be steadfast, and do not be hasty in time of calamity or testing. Cleave to him and do not depart, that you may be honored at the end of your life. Accept whatever is brought upon you, and in changes that humble you, be patient. For gold is tested in the fire, and acceptable men in the furnace of humiliation. Trust in him and he will help you. Make your way straight and hope in him. I can keep going, but this will keeps going. Actually, one more. Verse 10, consider the ancient generations and see whoever trusted in Yahweh and was put to shame, or whoever persevered in the fear of Yahweh and was forsaken, or whoever called upon him and was overlooked. None. None. All right, now let's look at, let's see, so we read verses 1 through 7, so let's read two more. And in order to know the signs and the mighty wonders in which the Yahweh would do in Egypt on account of the people Israel, in order that the children of Israel might fear Yahweh of their ancestors and walk in all his ways, and they and their seed after them all the days. So if the king of Pharaoh was all nice and happy and like, yeah, go ahead, take your people. Moses, yeah, go ahead. Have a good time. We wouldn't have had any of the plagues. We wouldn't have these miracle signs, and then we wouldn't have the chariots going into the midst of the water. All this had to be. So Yahweh knew ahead of time. Malolo was 20 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 94 years, and all Egypt called his name Pharaoh after the name of his father, and it was their custom to do to every king who reigned after them in Egypt. The rest, verses 10 through 35, is the Chittim versus Africa wars. So we're going to skip that. Go to 64. We're going to read verses 7 through the end. At that time, when Zepho had returned from the war, and when Zepho had seen how he prevailed over all the people of Africa, and had smitten them in battle at the edge of the sword, then Zepho advised with the children of Chittim to go to Egypt to fight with the sons of Jacob and with Pharaoh the king of Egypt. For Zepho had heard that the mighty men of Egypt were dead, and that Joseph and his brethren, the sons of Jacob, were dead, and that all their children, the children of Israel, remained in Egypt. And Zepho considered to go to fight against them and all Egypt, to avenge the cause of his brethren, the children of Esau, whom Joseph with his brethren and all Egypt had smitten in the land of Canaan, when they went up to bury Jacob in Hebron. You can read more about this in Yashar and Jubilees. And Zepho sent messengers to Hadad, son of Bedad, king of Edom, and to all his brethren, the children of Esau, saying, Did you not say that you would not fight against the king of Africa? For he is a member of your covenant. Behold, I fought with him, and smote him and all his people. Now therefore I have resolved to fight against Egypt, and the children of Jacob who are there, and I will be revenged of them for what Joseph, his brethren, and ancestors did to us in the land of Canaan, when they went up to bury their father in Hebron. Now then, if you are willing to come to me to assist me in fighting against them in Egypt, then shall we avenge the cause of our brethren. And the children of Esau hearkened to the words of Zepho, and the children of Esau gathered themselves together, a very great people, and they went to assist Zepho and the children of Shittim in battle. And Zepho sent to all the children of the east, and to all the children of Ishmael with words like unto these, and they gathered themselves, and came to the assistance of Zepho and the children of Shittim in the war upon Egypt. And all these kings, the king of Edom, and the king of the east, and all the children of Ishmael, and Zepho the king of Shittim, went forth and arrayed all their hosts in Hebron. And the camp was very heavy, extending in length a distance of 3 days' journey, a people numerous as the sand upon the seashore, which cannot be counted. And all these kings and all their hosts went down and came against all Egypt in battle, and encamped together in the valley of Pathros. And all Egypt heard their report, and they also gathered themselves together, all the people of the land of Egypt, and of all the cities belonging to Egypt, about 300,000 men. And the men of Egypt sent also, and you're going to understand while we're reading this, you're like, okay, this is just like whatever, history battles. This one's important because it's going to set up why Egypt put Israel into slavery. And the men of Egypt also sent the children of Israel, who were in those days in the land of Goshen, to come to them in order to go and fight with these kings. And the men of Israel assembled, and were about 150 men, and they went into battle to assist the Egyptians. And the men of Israel and of Egypt went forth, about 300,000 men and 150 men, and they went toward these kings to battle, and they placed themselves from without the land of Goshen opposite Pathros. And the Egyptians believed not in Israel to go with them in their camps together for battle. For all the Egyptians said, perhaps the children of Israel will deliver us into the hand of the children of Esau and Ishmael, for they are their brethren. And all the Egyptians said unto the children of Israel, remain you here together in your stand, and we will go and fight against the children of Esau and Ishmael. And if these kings should prevail over us, then come you all together upon them and assist us. And the children of Israel did so. And Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, king of Chittim, and Hadad, the son of Bedad, king of Edom, and all their camps, and all the children of the east, and children of Ishmael, a people numerous as the sand, encamped together in the valley of Pathros, opposite Tahaphanes. And Balaam, the son of Beor, the Syrian, was there in the camp of Zepho, for he came with the children of Chittim to the battle. And Balaam was a man highly honored in the eyes of Zepho and his men. And Zepho said unto Balaam, try by divination for us what we may know who will prevail in the battle, we or the Egyptians. And Balaam rose up and tried the art of divination, and he was skillful in the knowledge of it, but he was confused, and the work was destroyed in his hand. And he tried it again, but it did not succeed. And Balaam despaired of it, and left it, and did not complete it. For this was from Yahweh, in order to cause Zepho and his people to fall into the hands of the children of Israel, who had trusted in Yahweh, the Elohim of their ancestors, in their war. And Zepho and Hadad put their forces in battle array, and all the Egyptians went alone against them, about 300,000 men, and not one man of Israel was with them. And all the Egyptians fought with these kings opposite Pathros and Tahaphanes, and the battle was severe against the Egyptians. And the kings were stronger than the Egyptians in that battle. And about 180 men of Egypt fell on that day, and about 30 men of the forces of the kings, and all the men of Egypt fled from before the kings. So the children of Esau and Ishmael pursued the Egyptians, continuing to smite them into the place where the camp of the children of Israel. And all the Egyptians cried unto the children of Israel, saying, hasten to us, and assist us, and save us from the hand of Esau and Ishmael and the children of Chittim. And the 150 men of the children of Israel ran from their station to the camps of these kings, and the children of Israel cried unto Yahweh, their Elohim, to deliver them. So awesome. And Yahweh hearkened to Israel, and Yahweh gave all the men of the kings into their hand, and the children of Israel fought against these kings, and the children of Israel smote about 4,000 of the king's men. And Yahweh threw a great consternation in the camp of the kings, so that the fear of the children of Israel fell upon them. I mean, it's like so cool. What is this, like 1 million people, 2 million people, 500,000, 900,000 against 150? This is so amazing. And all the hosts of the kings fled from before the children of Israel, and the children of Israel pursued them, continuing to smite them into the borders of the land of Cush. And all the children of Israel slew of them in the road, yet 2,000 men, and the children of Israel, not one fell. And when the Egyptians saw that the children of Israel had fought with such few men with the kings, that the battle was so very severe against them, All the Egyptians were greatly afraid of their lives on account of the strong battle, and all Egypt fled. So this is the beginning of the Egyptians seeing the Israelites and like, whoa. Right? Because a new generation rose up and they're like, who are these people? And all Egypt fled, every man hiding himself from the arrayed forces. And they hid themselves in the road, and they left the Israelites to fight. And the children of Israel inflicted a very terrible blow upon the king's men, and they returned from them after they had driven them to the border of the land of Cush. And all Israel knew the thing which the men of Egypt had done to them, that they had fled from them in battle, and they had left them to fight alone. So the children of Israel also acted with cunning, and as the children of Israel returned from battle, they found some of the Egyptians in the road and smote them there. And whilst they slew them, they said unto them these words, Wherefore did you go from us and leave us, being a few people, to fight against these kings who had a great people to smite us, that you might thereby deliver your own souls? And some of which the Israelites met on the road, the children of Israel spoke to each other, saying, Smite, smite, for he is an Ishmaelite, or an Edomite, or from the children of Chittim. And they stood over him and slew him, and they knew that he was an Egyptian. And the children of Israel did these things cunningly against the Egyptians, because they had deserted them in battle, and had fled from them. The children of Israel slew of the men of Egypt in the road in this manner about 200 men. And all the men of Egypt saw the evil which the children of Israel had done to them. So all Egypt feared greatly the children of Israel, for they had seen their great power, and that not one man of them had fallen. So all the children of Israel returned with joy on the road to their Goshen, and the rest of Egypt returned each man to his place. Chapter 65 of Yashar. And it came to pass after these things that all the counselors of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and all the elders of Egypt assembled and came before the king and bowed down to the ground, and they sat before him. And the counselors and elders of Egypt spoke unto the king, saying, Behold, the people of the children of Israel is greater and mightier than we, and you know all the evil which they did to us in the road when we returned from battle. So now we're starting to see kind of the why of what happened in the book of Exodus. So when it says the people are greater and mightier, it's not like more people. It's like they're literally greater and stronger than we. And you have also seen their strong power, for this power is unto them from their fathers. For but a few men stood up against numerous as the sand of the sea, and smote them at the edge of the sword, and of themselves not one has fallen. So that if they had been numerous, they would have utterly destroyed them. Now therefore, give us counsel what to do with them, until we gradually destroy them from amongst us, lest they become too numerous for us in the land. For if the children of Israel should increase in the land, they will become an obstacle to us. And if any war should happen to take place, they with their great strength will join our enemy against us, and fight against us, destroy us from the land, and go away from it. So the king answered the elders of Egypt, and said unto them, This is the plan advised against Israel, from which we will not depart. Behold, in the land are Pithom and Ramesses, cities unfortified against battle. It behooves you and us to build them and to fortify them. So this war was the excuse for this. Give me 1 second. I think I have to sneeze. Okay. So this was the excuse for putting the children of Israel to work. Was, hey, war's going on. There's these cities, and they're not even fortified, right? Now, therefore, go you also and act cunningly toward them, and proclaim a voice in Egypt and in Goshen at the command of the king, saying, All ye men of Egypt, Goshen, Pathros, and all their inhabitants, the king has commanded us to build Pithom and Ramesses, and to fortify them for battle. Who amongst you of all Egypt and of the children of Israel and of all the inhabitants of the cities are willing to build with us? Shall each have his wages given to him daily at the king's order. So go ye first and do cunningly, and gather yourselves and come to Pithom and Ramesses to build. And whilst you are building, cause a proclamation of this kind to be made throughout Egypt every day at the command of the king. And when some of the children of Israel shall come to build with you, you shall give them their wages daily for a few days. And after they shall have built with you for their daily hire, drag yourselves away from them daily, one by one in secret. And then shall you rise up and become their taskmasters and officers, and you shall leave them afterward to build without wages. And should they refuse, then force them with all your might to build. So this was a sneaky plan of how they got them into slavery. It wasn't just like one day there's these powerful people, and then all of a sudden they're like enslaved, and they're like, how'd this happen? It was done over time, right? Just like Modern day conspiracies and secret things happen behind closed doors in secret, and they do things in stages. They roll it out in phases, like slowly, slowly, slowly. If they did it all at once, people would rebel. They do it slow, 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 generation after generation. Just turn up the heat a little bit. That's that boiling frog proverb or saying, if you throw a frog into a boiling pot, he'll jump right out. But if you put it into cool water or warm water, I don't know, but then turn up the heat slowly, you'll get hot, and they'll stay in there and they'll boil to death. It's kind of the same mentality. And if you will do this, it will be well with us to strengthen our land against the children of Israel. For on account of the fatigue of the building and the work, the children of Israel will decrease, because you will deprive them of their wives daily. So they're like, hey, let's just overwork them with hard work, and they just won't be able to multiply anymore. And all the elders of Egypt heard the counsel of the king, and the counsel seemed good in their eyes, and in the eyes of the servants of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of all Egypt, and they did according to the word of the king. And all the servants went away from the king, and they caused a proclamation to be made in all Egypt, in Tahaphanes, and in Goshen, and all the cities which surround Egypt, saying, You have seen what the children of Esau and Ishmael did to us, who came to war against us, and wished to destroy us. Now therefore the king commanded us to fortify the land, to build the cities Pithom and Ramses, and to fortify them for battle, if they should again come to us. Whosoever of you from all Egypt and from all the children of Israel will come to build with us, he shall have his daily wages given by the king, as his command is unto us. And when Egypt and all the children of Israel heard all the servants of Pharaoh had spoken, there came from the Egyptians and the children of Israel to build with the servants of Pharaoh. So they came willingly to start building Pithom and Ramses, but none of the children of Levi came with their brethren to build. Aha. Listen, we'll explain this a little bit further. And all the servants of Pharaoh and his princes came at first with deceit to build with all Israel as daily hired laborers. And they gave to Israel their daily hire at the beginning. And the servants of Pharaoh built with all Israel, and were employed in that work with Israel for a month. And at the end of the month, all the servants of Pharaoh began to withdraw secretly from the people of Israel daily. And Israel went on with the work at that time, but then received their daily hire, because some of the men of Egypt were yet carrying on with the work with Israel. At that time, therefore, the Egyptians gave Israel their hire in those days, in order that they, the Egyptians, their fellow workmen, might also take the pay for their labor. Oops. And at the that's the cushion here. And at the end of a year and 4 months, all the Egyptians had withdrawn from the children of Israel, so that the children of Israel were left alone, engaged in the work. So over a year and 4 months, this spread out. And after all the Egyptians had withdrawn from the children of Israel, they returned and became oppressors and officers over them. And some of them stood over the children of Israel as taskmasters, to receive from them all that they gave them for pay of their labor. And the Egyptians did in this manner to the children of Israel day by day, in order to afflict them in their work. And all the children of Israel were alone engaged in labor, and the Egyptians refrained from giving any pay to the children of Israel from that time forward. And when some of the men of Israel refused to work on account of the wages not being given to them, then the exactors and the servants of Pharaoh oppressed them, and smote them with heavy blows, and made them return by force, and labor with their brethren. And thus did all the Egyptians unto the children of Israel all their days. So it's like their strength was taken away from them as they yielded unto these Egyptians in servitude. And all the children of Israel were greatly afraid of the Egyptians in this matter. So when they're afraid, they don't have any power. That's still what they do today. That's still what they do. They try to rule the people in fear, because when you're in fear, you're controllable. And you have no power. If your fear is towards fear of men, there's no power. If your fear is towards the fear of Yah, and don't fear man, you're not controllable. And all the children of Israel returned and worked alone without pay. And the children of Israel built Pithom and Ramses, and all the children of Israel did the work, some making bricks, and some building. And the children of Israel built and fortified all the land of Egypt and its walls. And the children of Israel were engaged in work for many years. So this goes on for years now, until the time came when Yahweh remembered them and brought them out of Egypt. Listen to this. But the children of Levi were not employed in the work with their brethren of Israel from the beginning unto the day of their going forth from Egypt. That's why it makes a lot of sense that, like, Moses and Aaron, they could just come and go and talk to Pharaoh, and they weren't like, hey, what are you doing? You're not working, So Levites didn't go with him, for all the children of Levi knew that the Egyptians had spoken all these words with deceit to the Israelites. Therefore the children of Levi refrained from approaching to work with their brethren. And the Egyptians did not direct their attention to make the children of Levi work afterwards, since they had not been with their brethren at the beginning. Therefore the Egyptians left them alone. A nice lesson to learn in these last days. We had a video about this about a year ago called The Plan Moving Forward. Just search The Plan Moving Forward, the Parable of Vineyard. And I spent a lot of time on this concept here about, well, being in modern day Egypt now, a lot of people understand that where we live in the United States, and really the greater world, but mainly the United States, is modern day Egypt. It's the modern financial power. It's the modern military power. And the children of Israel came and fled here for a famine to come here and ended up building up this country, just like they built up Egypt through hard work. And then over time, they were enslaved. In this day and age, through debt, through a lot of the changes that happened in the 1800s, and then coming off the gold standard, and all that stuff that we've learned about the falsities of money and different things, different keywords that I'm not going to use on this study so it doesn't get censored. But you know the deal. It's just a different type of slavery today. And here we are, waiting for our deliverer in the midst of Egypt, once again. And so the Levites were like, hey, this is crazy. They're lying. They're deceiving us. We ain't going to do this. And so they were able to just step away. So why don't we just step away from the direction that Egypt is going and the path of death that they're leading people on? Let's just that slow, awkward walk backwards, like, get out of here. And the hands of the men of Egypt were direct with continued severity against the children of Israel in that work, and the Egyptians made the children of Israel work with rigor. And the Egyptians embittered the lives of the children of Israel with hard work in mortar and bricks, and also in all manner of work in the field. And the children of Israel called Melol, the king of Egypt, Meror, king of Egypt, because in his days the Egyptians had embittered, Maror, right, is bitterness, embittered their lives with all manner of work. And all the work wherein the Egyptians made the children of Israel labor, they exacted with rigor in order to afflict the children of Israel. But the more they afflicted them, the more they increased and grew. And the Egyptians were grieved because of the children of Israel. Chapter 66. At that time died Hadad, the son of Bedad, king of Edom, and Samlah from Mesrekah, from the country of the children of the east, reigned in his place. In the 13th year of the reign of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, which was the 125th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, Samlah had reigned over Edom 18 years. And when he had reigned, he drew forth his host to go to fight against Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, and the children of Chittim, because they had made war against Angeas, king of Africa, and they destroyed his whole army. But he did not engage with him, for the children of Esau prevented him, saying he was their brother. So Samlah listened to the voice of the children of Esau, and turned back with all his forces to the land of Edom, and did not proceed to fight against Zepho, the son of Eliphaz. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, heard this thing, saying, Samlah, king of Edom, has resolved to fight the children of Chittim, and afterward he will come to fight against Egypt. So this is fear. Now he's going to start fear-mongering. And when the Egyptians heard this matter, they increased the labor upon the children of Israel, lest the Israelites should do unto them as they did unto them in war with the children of Esau in the days of Hadad. So the Egyptians said unto the children of Israel, Hasten and do your work, and finish your tasks, and strengthen the land, lest the children of Esau your brethren should come to fight against us. For on your account they will come against us. So they started selling them fear. And the children of Israel did the work of the men in Egypt day by day, and the Egyptians afflicted the children of Israel in order to lessen them in the land. But as the Egyptians increased the labor upon the children of Israel, so did the children of Israel increase and multiply. And all Egypt was filled with the children of Israel. And in the 125th year of Israel's going down into Egypt, all the Egyptians saw that their counsel did not succeed against Israel, but that they increased and grew, and the land of Egypt and the land of Goshen were filled with the children of Israel. So this is after years and years of oppression and hard work. They started just multiplying like crazy. So all the elders of Egypt and its wise men came before the king and bowed down to him and sat before him. And all the elders of Egypt and the wise men thereof said unto the king, May the king live forever. You did counsel us the counsel against the children of Israel, and we did unto them according to the word of the king. But in proportion to the increase of the labor, so do they increase and grow in the land, and behold, the whole country is filled with them. Now therefore, our master and king, the eyes of all Egypt are upon you, to give them advice with your wisdom, by which they may prevail over Israel to destroy them, or to diminish them from the land. And the king answered them, saying, Give you counsel in this matter, that we may know what to do unto them. And an officer one of the king's counselors, whose name was Job, from Mesopotamia in the land of Uz, answered the king, saying," yes, this is the same Job we learn about in the book of Job. He had rough beginnings, but an amazing life after he left Egypt. "If it pleases the king, let him hear the counsel of his servant." And the king said unto him, "Speak." And Job spoke before the king, the princes, and before all the elders of Egypt, saying, "Behold, the counsel of the king, which he advised formerly respecting the labor of the children of Israel, is very good, and you must not remove from them that labor forever. But this is the advice counseled by which you may lessen them, if it seem good to the king to afflict them. Behold, we have feared war for a long time, and we said, when Israel becomes fruitful in the land, they will drive us from the land if a war should take place. If it please the king, let a royal decree go forth, and let it be written in the laws of Egypt, which shall not be revoked, that every male child born to the Israelites, his blood shall be spilled upon the ground. And by your doing this, when all the male children of Israel shall have died, the evil of their wars will cease. Let the king do so, and send for us all the Hebrew midwives, and order them in this matter to execute it. So the thing pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Job. And the king sent for the Hebrew midwives to be called." And by the way, as far as Job is concerned, Job's story is much like a lot of ours. Who of us were righteous people our entire lives? No. How many of us deserve death? How many of us did atrocious things? How many of us did horrible things? How many of us repented those horrible things, left Egypt, and spiritually in our case, left Egypt and was tested by Yah in the wilderness, and our faith was proved? Isn't that what happened to Job? He had some rough beginnings, maybe some blood on his hands, but eventually he saw the power of Israel and the truth of the Elohim of Israel, and left and lived a righteous life and was tested harder than anybody we've ever heard in scriptures, and was rewarded for his faith. And the king sent for the Hebrew midwives to be called, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other was Puah. And the midwives came before the king and stood in his presence. And the king said unto them, when you do the office of the midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. But if you will not do this thing, then I will burn you up and all your houses with fire. But the midwives feared Elohim. They did not fear what the king could do to them, and did not hearken to the king of Egypt, nor to his words. And when the Hebrew women brought forth to the midwife the son or daughter, then did the midwife do all that was necessary to the child, and let it live. Thus did the midwives all the days. And this thing was told to the king, and he sent and called for the midwives, and said unto them, Why have you done this thing, and have saved the children alive? And the midwives answered and spoke together before the king, saying, Let not the king think that the Hebrew women are as the Egyptian women. For all the children of Israel are hale, which means healthy, lively, and before the midwife comes to them they are delivered. And as for us, thy handmaids, for many days no Hebrew woman has brought forth upon us. For all the Hebrew women are their own midwives, because they are hale. And Pharaoh heard their words, and believed them in this matter. And the midwives went away from the king, and Elohim dealt well with them, and the people multiplied and waxed exceedingly. All right, so now we got some backstory of what actually happened in chapter 1 of Exodus. I hope that was a blessing for you. We're just getting started too, because we got a lot more to cover. We're going Exodus 1 through 6 verse 1. So this is a long Torah portion. Now we're going to look at the Targums. We're going to look at chapter 1. Thanks to Josh for doing this. Chapter 1 verse 17 through the end of the Targums. Excuse me. Let's zoom in a little bit. But the midwives feared before Yahweh, and it's cutting it off. And would not do according to what the king of Mitzrayim had said to them. But they saved the children. And the king of Mitzrayim called the wives and said to them, Why have you done this thing, and have saved the children? And the midwives said to Pharaoh, The Hebrew women, the Hebrew women are not as the Mitzrayite, for they are sturdy or courageous and wise-minded. Before the midwife comes to them, they lift up their eyes in prayer, supplicating mercy before their Father who is in heaven, who heareth the voice of their prayer, and at once they are heard and bring forth and delivered in peace. And Yahweh did good unto the midwives, and the people multiplied and prevailed greatly. And for as much as the midwives feared before Yahweh, they obtained for themselves a good name unto the ages. And the word of Yahweh builded up for them a royal house, even the house of the high priesthood. Somewhere it says that this is Miriam and... Oh, yeah. And the king of Mitzrayim told the Hebrew midwives, the name of the first of whom was Shiphrah, and she was Jochebed. The name of the second, Puah, this was Miriam. And so it says he built a royal house, even the house of the high priesthood, of course, through the lineage of Levi, the lineage of Aharon. So, backstory. Praise Yah. All right, now we're going to go back to Exodus, and we're going to go to chapter 2. We're going to read verses 1 through 10. All right. And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took to be his woman the daughter of Levi, and the woman conceived, and bore a son. And when she saw then that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months. I mean, there's something interesting about this. Aren't all children goodly children? But there's something a little different about Moses, and we'll learn about that shortly. And she hid him 3 months, which, interesting here is, it says, this is 3 yerachim, 3 moons. Yareach is moon, and this is the Hebrew word yerachim. She hid him 3 months. She hid him 3 moons. It's just interesting point of evidence when we talk about how to calculate months. Some would say we use the moon. Some would say we don't. I believe we use the moon. But if you don't, I'm still your brother. You're still my brother or sister. I love you. This is just Torah. Just going through the Torah. And when she could no longer hide him, she took for him an ark of bulrushes and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the children therein, and she laid it in the reeds by the river's brink. And his sister stood afar off to what would be done to him. So she was like, what's going to happen to him? And the daughter of Pharaoh came down to wash herself at the river, and her maidens walked along by the river's side. And when she saw the ark among the reeds, she sent her maid to fetch it. And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him, and said, this is one of the Hebrew children. This is one of the Ephraim children. Then said his sister to Pharaoh's daughter, shall I go and call to you a nurse of the Ephraim women, that she may nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said unto her, take this child away and nurse it for me, and I will give you your wages. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And that child grew, and she brought him unto and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son. And she called his name Moshe, and she said, because I drew him out of water. So let's take a look at Yashar 67. There was a man in the land of Egypt, of the seed of Levi, whose name was Amram, the son of Kohath, the son of Levi, the son of Israel. And this man went and took a wife, namely Jochebed, the daughter of Levi, his father's sister. And she was 126 years old, and he came unto her. And the woman conceived and bare a daughter, and she called her named Miriam, because in those days the Egyptians had embittered the lives of the children of Israel. And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Aharon. For in the days of her conception Pharaoh had began to spill the blood of the male children of Israel. In those days died Zepho, the son of Eliphaz, the son of Esau, king of Chittim, and Janeas reigned in his stead. And at the time that Zepho reigned over the children of Chittim was 50 years, and he died and was buried in the city of Nabna, in the land of Chittim. And Janeas, one of the mighty men of the children of Chittim, reigned after him, and he reigned 50 years. And it was after the death of the king of Chittim that Balaam, the son of Beor, fled from the land of Chittim, and he went and came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. And Pharaoh received him with great honor, for he had heard of his wisdom, and he gave him presents, and made him for a counselor, and aggrandized him. And Balaam dwelt in Egypt in honor with all the nobles of the kings, and the nobles exalted him, because they all coveted to learn his wisdom. And in the 130th year of Israel's going down to Egypt, Pharaoh dreamed that he was sitting upon his kingly throne, and lifted up his eyes, and saw an old man standing before him. And there were scales in the hands of the old man, such scales as are used by merchants. And the old man took the scales, and hung them before Pharaoh. And the old man took all the elders of Egypt, and all its nobles and great men, and he tied them together, and put them into one scale. And he took a milk kid, and put it into the other scale, and the kid preponderated over also. exalted or was excelled over all. And Pharaoh was astonished at this dreadful vision, why the kid should preponderate over all. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. And Pharaoh rose up early in the morning and called all his servants and relayed to them the dream, and the men were greatly afraid. And the king said to all his wise men, Interpret, I pray you, the dream which I dreamed, that I may know it. And Balaam the son of Beor answered the king and said unto him, This means nothing else but a great evil that will spring up against Egypt in the latter days. For a son will be born to Israel, who will destroy all Egypt and its inhabitants, and bring forth the Israelites from Egypt with a mighty hand. Now therefore, O king, take counsel upon this matter, that you may destroy the hope of the children of Israel and their expectation before this evil arise against Egypt. We're going to come back to that in a second, of what Balaam's plan was, because the hard labor didn't work. Job's idea didn't work, and so now Balaam's going to have another idea. So we're going to look at the Targums, chapter 115. And Pharaoh, told he that being asleep, had seen in his dream, and behold, all the land of Mitzrayim was placed in one scale of a balance, and a lamb, the young of sheep, was ill the other scale, and the scale with the lamb, and it overweighed. Forthwith he sent and called all the magicians of Mitzrayim, and imparted to them his dream. Immediately Jannes and Jambres, which are the two sons of Balaam, the chief of the magicians, opened their mouth and answered Pharaoh. So a little slight difference, but the same story. A certain child is to be born in the congregation of Israel, by whose hand will be destruction to all the land of Mitzrayim. Therefore did Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, give counsel to the Hebrew wise. Anyway, so we see the same dream here. Just a little difference. The only difference was one, the book of Yashar said Balaam interpreted the dream, and the other, the Targum says that his two sons, Jannes and Jambres, who were Balaam's sons, interpreted the dreams. Sorry. And the king said unto Balaam, And what shall we do unto Israel? Surely after a certain manner we did at first counsel against them, and could not prevail over them. Now therefore give you also advice against them, by which we may prevail over them. And Balaam answered the king, saying, Send now, and call thy two counselors, and we will see what their advice is upon the matter, and afterward thy servant will speak. And the king sent and called his two counselors, Reuel, which is eventually Moses' father-in-law, Jethro, and the Midianite, and Job the Uzite, and they came and sat before the king. And the king said to them, Behold, you have both heard the dream which I have dreamed, and the interpretation thereof. Now therefore give counsel, and know and see what is to be done to the children of Israel, and whereby we may prevail over them, before their evil shall spring up against us. Sounds a lot like the birth of Messiah, right? And Reuel the Midianite answered the king and said, May the king live, may the king live forever. If it seem good to the king, let him desist from the Hebrews and leave them, and let him not stretch forth his hand against them. For these are they whom Yahweh did choose in the days of old, and took as the lot of his inheritance from amongst all the nations of the earth and the kings of the earth. And who is there that stretched out his hand against him with impunity, of whom their Elohim was not avenged? And now he goes, just to save a little bit of time, he goes through all the accounts. He goes through Abraham and Sarah in Egypt. He talks about in Abimelech, when Abimelech took Sarah in the dream, and he talks about when Isaac into the Philistines. And it also talks about the prevailing of Jacob over Esau, and talks about the time of Joseph, right? When Joseph was raised through all. So he's going over all the history. Then he concludes, Now therefore, if it seem good in thine eyes to cease from destroying the children of Israel, but if it not be thy will that they shall dwell in Egypt, send them forth from here, that they may go to the land of Canaan, the land where their ancestors sojourned. And when Pharaoh heard the words of Jethro, he was very angry with him, so that he arose with shame from the king's presence, and went to Midian his land, and took Joseph's stick with him. This is going to come into play a little bit later. And the king said to Job the Uzite, What sayest you, Job, and what is thy advice respecting the Hebrews? So Job said to the king, so he saw just what happened to Jethro. He's like, Job says to the king, Behold, all the inhabitants of the land are in your power. Let the king do as it seems good in his eyes. So he's like, I'm good. And the king said unto Balaam, What do you say, Balaam? Speak thy word, that we may hear it. And Balaam said to the king, Of all that the king has counseled against the Hebrews, they will be delivered, and the king will not be able to prevail over them with any counsel. For if you think to lessen them by the flaming fire, and you cannot prevail over them, for surely their Elohim delivered Abraham their father from Ur of the Chaldeans. And if you think to destroy them with a sword, surely Isaac their father was delivered from it, and a ram was placed in his stead. And if with hard and rigorous labor you think to lessen them, you will not prevail even in this, for their father Jacob served Laban in all manner of hard work and prospered. Now therefore, O king, hear my words, for this is the counsel which is counseled against them, by which you will prevail over them, and from which you shall not depart. If it please the king, let him order all their children which shall be born from this day forward to be thrown into the water. So this is how it was decreed, to go from just killing the males to be thrown in the water. All right. For by this can you wipe away their name, for none of them, nor of their fathers, were tried in this manner by water. And the king heard the words of Balaam, and the thing pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Balaam. And the king ordered a proclamation to be issued, and a law to be made throughout the land of Egypt, saying, Every male child born to the Hebrews from this day forward shall be thrown into the water. And Pharaoh called unto his servants, saying, Go now, and seek throughout the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel are, and see that every son born to the Hebrews shall be cast into the river, but every daughter shall you let live. And when the children of Israel heard this thing which Pharaoh had commanded, to cast their male children into the river, some of the people separated from their wives, and others adhered to them. And from that day forward, when the time of delivery arrived to those women of Israel who had remained with their husbands, they went to the field to bring forth there. And they brought forth in the field, and they left their children upon the field and returned home. This might sound crazy, but listen. And Yahweh, who had sworn to their ancestors to multiply them, sent one of his ministering angels which are in heaven to wash each child in water, to anoint and to swathe it, and to put into its hands 2 smooth stones, from the one of which it sucked milk, and from the other honey. And he caused its hair to grow to its knees, by which it might cover itself, and to comfort it, and to cleave to it, through his compassion for it. So this is kind of interesting, because this actually ties into a couple passages that are kind of have puzzled commentators for years. Deuteronomy 32:13, he made him ride on the high places of the land, and he ate the produce of the field. He suckled him with honey out of the rock, and oil out of flinty rock. Wherever did honey come out of the rock? Well, we just read that in the book of Yashar. Also, in the Targums, let's take a look at the Targums. Chapter 15. Let's zoom in just a little bit here for you. Yahweh is mighty and greatly to be feared over all the world. He spake in his word and became to me an Elohim of salvation. From their mother's breasts even the children have given signs with their fingers to their fathers, and said, This is our Elohim, who nourished us with honey from the rock, and with oil from the stone of clay, at the time when our mothers went forth upon the face of the field to give birth, and leave us there. And he sent an angel who washed us and enwrapped us, and now we will give praise to him. He is the Elohim of our fathers, and we will exalt him. Pretty cool confirming witness there in the Targums. All right, so going back to Joshua 67, verse 56, And when Elohim had compassion over them and had desire to multiply them upon the face of the land, he ordered his earth to receive them, to be preserved therein until the time of their going up, after which the earth opened its mouth and vomited them forth, and they sprouted forth from the city like the herb of the earth and the grass of the forest, and they returned each to his family and to his father's house, and they remained with them. And the babes of the children of Israel were upon the earth like the herb of the field, through Elohim's grace to them. And when all the Egyptians saw this thing, they went forth each to his field with his yoke of oxen and his plowshare, and they plowed it up as one of the plows of the earth at seed time. And when they plowed, they were unable to hurt the infants of the children of Israel, so the people increased and waxed exceedingly. And Pharaoh ordered his officers daily to go to Goshen to seek for the babes of the children of Israel. And when they had sought and found one, they took it from its mother's bosom by force, and threw it into the river, but the female child they left with its mother, and thus did the Egyptians do to the Israelites all the days. So now Joshua 68. I want to read something for you real quick. Exodus 15:20. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aharon, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. So the book of Exodus says that Miriam is a prophetess. Wouldn't you think that there would be some text that preserves her prophesying? Because it's not in the canon. You won't find it anywhere. You'll find it in one place. Let's read it. Book of Yashar 68. And it was at that time that the spirit of Elohim was upon Miriam, the daughter of Amram, the sister of Aharon. And she went forth and prophesied about the house, saying, Behold, a son will be born unto us from my father and mother this time, and he will save Israel from the hands of Egypt. And when Amram heard the words of his... So that's her prophecy. And when Amram heard the words of his daughter, he went and took his wife back to the house after they had driven her away, at the time when Pharaoh ordered every male child of the house of Jacob to be thrown into the water. So Amram took Jochebed his wife 3 years after he had driven her away, and he came to her, and she conceived. And at the end of 7 months from her conception, she brought forth a son, and the whole house was filled with great light, as of the light of the sun and the moon at the time of their shining. So this is gives a little idea of when she saw that it was a goodly child. There's something a little different about Moses. So when he was born, he was filled. The whole house was filled with great light, as of the light of the sun and the moon at the time of their shining. And actually, the book of Enoch, chapter 106, verse 4. Or maybe not. Okay. So this is Enoch. No, I'm sorry. This is Noah being born, and his body was white as snow and as red as the blooming of the rose, and the hair of his head and his long locks were white as wool, and his eyes beautiful. And when he opened his eyes, he lighted up the whole house like the sun, and the whole house was very bright. So very similar birth to Moses as it was to Noah. Pretty cool. Yashar 68 verse 5. And when the woman saw that the child that it was good and pleasing to the sight, she hid it for 3 months in an inner room. In those days the Egyptians conspired to destroy all the Hebrews there. And the Egyptian women went to Goshen, where the children of Israel were, and they carried their young ones upon their shoulders, their babes who could not yet speak. And in those days when the women of the children of Israel brought forth, each woman had hidden her son from before the Egyptians, that the Egyptians might not know of their bringing forth, and might not destroy them from the land. And the Egyptian women came to Goshen, and their children who could not speak were upon their shoulders. And when an Egyptian woman came into the house of a Hebrew woman, her babe began to cry. And when it cried, the child that was in the inner room answered it. So the Egyptian women went and told the house of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh sent his officers to take the children and slay them. Thus did the Egyptians to the Hebrew woman all the days. And it was at that time, about 3 months from Jochebed's concealment of her son, that the thing was known in Pharaoh's house. And the woman hastened to take away her son before the officers came. And she took him an ark of bulrushes, and daubed it with slime and with pitch, and put the child therein. And she laid it in the flags by the river's brink. And his sister Miriam stood afar off to know what would be done to him, and what would become of her words. And Elohim sent for her. She was like, I want to know. I prophesied of this baby, and he's going to die. And Elohim sent forth at that time a terrible heat in the land of Egypt, which burned up the flesh of man like the sun in his circuit. And it greatly oppressed the Egyptians. And all the Egyptians went down to battle in the river, on account of the consuming heat which burned up their flesh. And Bathia, the daughter of Pharaoh, went also to bathe in the river, owing to the consuming heat, and her maidens walked at the river's side, and all the women of Egypt as well. And Bathia lifted up her eyes to the river, and she saw the ark upon the water, and sent her maid to fetch it. And she opened it, and saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him. And she said, This is one of the Hebrew children. And all the women of Egypt walking on the river's side to desire to give him suck, but he would not suck, for this thing was from Yahweh, in order to restore him to his mother's breast. And Miriam his sister was at that time amongst the Egyptian women at the river's side, and she saw this thing, and she said to Pharaoh's daughter, Shall I go and fetch a nurse of the Hebrew women, that she may nurse the child for you? And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, Go. And the young woman went, and she called the child's mother. And Pharaoh's daughter said to Jochebed, Take this child away and suckle it for me, and I will pay you your wages, 2 bits of silver daily. And the woman took the child and nursed it. And at the end of 2 years, when the child grew up, she brought him to the daughter of Pharaoh, and he was unto her as a son. But she called his name Moses, for she said, Because I drew him out of water. And Amram his father called his name Chabar, for he said, It was for him that he associated with his wife, whom he had turned away. And Jochebed his mother called his name Jekuthiel, because she said, I have hoped for him to the Almighty, and Elohim restored him unto me. And Miriam his sister called him Yered, for she descended after him to the river to know what would be his end. And Aharon, his brother, called his name Abizanuch, saying, "My father left my mother and returned to her on his account." And Kohath, the father of Amram, called his name Abigdor, because on his account did Elohim repair the breach of the house of Jacob, that they could no longer throw their male children into the water. And their nurse called him Abisocho, saying, "In his tabernacle was he hidden for 3 months, on account of the children of Ham." And all the children of Israel called his name Shemaiah, son of Nathaniel, for they said, "In his days has Elohim heard their cries, and rescued them from their oppressors." And Moses was in Pharaoh's house, and was unto Bathia, Pharaoh's daughter, as a son. And Moses grew up amongst the king's children. We're going to skip this. Wait. No, we can't skip this. No. Okay. Yashar 69, verse 4. And when Pharaoh the king of Egypt saw that the counsel which Balaam had advised respecting the children of Israel did not succeed, but that they still were fruitful and multiplied and increased throughout the land of Egypt, then Pharaoh commanded in those days that a proclamation should be issued throughout Egypt to the children of Israel, saying, "No man shall diminish anything of his daily labor. And the man who shall be found deficient in his labor which he performs daily, whether in mortar or in bricks, then his youngest son shall be put in their place." And the labor of Egypt strengthened upon the children of Israel in those days. And behold, if one brick was deficient in any man's daily labor, the Egyptians took his youngest boy by force from his mother, and put him into the building in the place of the brick which his father had left wanting. And the men of Egypt did so to all the children of Israel day by day, all the days for a long period. But the tribe of Levi did not at that time work with the Israelites, their brethren, from the beginning. For the children of Levi knew the cunning of the Egyptians, which they exercised at first towards the Israelites. Okay, this is an amazing story. So first, when we see here, Balaam, the son of Beor, with his 2 sons, Jannes and Jambres. So they're having a dinner. I'm just going to paraphrase this because I wanted to save a little bit of time in this Torah portion. They're having a dinner. Moses is sitting on Bathia's lap. The king is right next to him. Moses grabs the crown, puts it on his own head, and everybody's like, and Balaam is like, "This is the kid I was telling you about in your dream that's going to destroy you. Let's kill him." And so before they destroyed him, it said the angel of Yah came down and said, "Let's test the boy first." And he said, put an onyx stone and a lump of hot coal in front of the boy. And if he grabs the onyx stone, then we know that the boy has wisdom and he grabs your crown with wisdom. But if you grab the lump of coal, then we know that he's just a boy and he grabbed it on just being a child. So long story short, Moses was grabbing for the precious stone, and it said the angel of Yah guided his hand towards the lump of coal, and he put it in his mouth. Let's just read that real quickly. And the king ordered the onyx stone and the coal to be brought forth and placed before Moses. And they placed the boy before them, and the lad endeavored to stretch forth his hand to the onyx stone, but the angel of Yahweh took his hand and placed it upon the coal. And the coal became extinguished in his hand, and he lifted up and put it into his mouth, and burned part of his lips and part of his tongue, and he became heavy in mouth and in tongue. And when the king and princes saw this, they knew that Moses had not acted with wisdom in taking off the crown from the king's head. So this is interesting, this part about him putting the coal in his mouth, and it said his mouth became heavy. This reminds me of Exodus 4:10, and Moses said unto Yahweh, O my master, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech and slow of tongue. And I do believe that he was slow of speech and slow of tongue because of whatever had singed his mouth. Maybe his tongue didn't operate normally at that time. So just something to consider. And then we're going to look at Targums chapter 2, verse 1. And Amram, the man of the tribe of Levi, went and returned to live in marriage with Jochebed his wife, whom he had put away on account of the decree of Pharaoh. And she was the daughter of 130 years when he returned to her. But a miracle was wrought in her, and she returned unto youth as she was, when in her minority she was called the daughter of Levi. Just something to consider. Okay, and here's Moses asking... so let's stop there. Hold on. Hang on. I'm just trying to figure out. So here Moses sees their labors. Moses says unto Pharaoh, I pray, my master, I have come to seek a small request of you. Turn not away my face empty. And Pharaoh said unto him, Speak. And Moses said unto Pharaoh, Let there be given unto thy servants, the children of Israel, who were on Goshen, 1 day to rest therein from their labor. The king answered Moses and said, Behold, I have lifted up thy face in this thing to grant thy request. And Pharaoh ordered a proclamation to be issued throughout Egypt and Goshen, saying, To you, all the children of Israel, thus says the king, For 6 days you shall do your work and labor, but on the 7th day you shall rest, and shall not perform any work. Thus you shall do all the days, as the king and Moses the son of Bathiah have commanded. And Moses rejoiced at this thing which the king had granted to him, and all the children of Israel did as Moses ordered them. For this thing was from Yahweh to the children of Israel, for Yahweh had begun to remember the children of Israel to save them for the sake of their fathers. And Yahweh was with Moses, and his fame went throughout Egypt. And Moses became great in the eyes of all the Egyptians, and in the eyes of all the children of Israel, seeking good for his people Israel, and speaking words of peace regarding them to the king. All right, so let's go back to Exodus chapter 2. And we're going to read verses 11 through 15. And it came to pass in those days when Moshe was grown that he went out unto his brethren and looked on their burdens, and he spied a Mitzri smiting an Ivri, one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Mitzrite and hid him in the sand. And when he went out the second day, behold, 2 men of the Ivri strove together. And he said to him that did the wrong, Wherefore smite you your fellow? And he said, Who made you a prince and a judge over us? Intends you to kill me as you killed the Mitzrite? And Moshe feared and said, Surely this thing is known. Now when Pharaoh heard this thing, he sought to slay Moshe. But Moshe fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well. A lot happened here. Let's talk about it. So we're going to read Yashar 71. And when Moses was 18 years old, he desired to see his father and mother, and he went to see them in Goshen. And when Moses had come near Goshen, he came to the place where the children of Israel were engaged in work. And he observed their burdens, and he saw an Egyptian smiting one of his Hebrew brethren. And when the man who was beaten saw Moses, he ran to him for help. For the man Moses was greatly respected in the house of Pharaoh. And he said to him, My master, attend to me. This Egyptian came to my house in the night, and bound me, and came to my wife in my presence. So he had intercourse with his wife in his presence, and now he seeks to take my life away. And when Moses heard this wicked thing, his anger was kindled against the Egyptian, and he turned this way and the other, and when he saw there was no man there, he smote the Egyptian and hid him in the sand, and delivered the Hebrew from the hand of him that smote him. And the Hebrew went to his house, and Moses returned to his home, and went forth and came back to the king's house. And when the man had returned home, he thought of repudiating his wife, for it was not right in the house of Jacob for any man to come to his wife after she had been defiled. And the woman went and told her brothers, and the woman's brothers sought to slay him, and he fled to his house and escaped. And on the second day Moses went forth to his brethren, and saw, and behold, 2 men were quarreling. And he said to the wicked one, Why do you smite your neighbor? And he answered and said to him, Who has set you for a prince and a judge over us? Do you think to slay me as you did slay the Egyptian? And Moses was afraid, and he said, Surely this thing is known. And Pharaoh heard of this affair, and he ordered Moses to be slain. So Elohim sent his angel, and he appeared unto Pharaoh in the likeness of the captain of the guard. And the angel of Yahweh took the sword from the hand of the captain of the guard, and took his head off with it, for the likeness of the captain of the guard was turned into the likeness of Moses. And the angel of Yahweh took hold of the right hand of Moses, and brought him forth from Egypt, and placed him from without the borders of Egypt, a distance of 40 days' journey. And Aharon his brother alone remained in the land of Egypt, and he prophesied to the children of Israel, saying, Thus says Yahweh Elohim of your ancestors, Throw away each man the abomination of his eyes, and do not defile yourselves with the idols of Egypt. And the children of Israel rebelled, and would not hearken to Aharon at that time. And Yahweh thought to destroy them, were it not at that time Yahweh remembered the covenant which he had made with Abraham, Yitzchak, and Jacob. In those days the hand of Pharaoh continued to be severe against the children of Israel, and he crushed and oppressed them, until the time when Elohim sent forth his word and took notice of them. 72, we're going to skip. This is the wars of Cush and the origin and how Moses came to rule over Cush, Ethiopia. 73, we're going to read verses 28 through 34. So this is Moses ruling in Cush. And Balaam the magician, when he saw that the city was taken, this is Cush, and he opened the gate, and he and his 2 sons and his 8 brothers fled and returned to Egypt to Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They are the sorcerers and magicians who are mentioned in the book of the Torah, standing against Moshe when Yahweh brought the plagues upon Egypt. So Moshe took the city by his wisdom, and the children of Cush placed him on the throne instead of Kikianus, the king of Cush. And they placed a royal crown upon his head, and they gave him for a wife Adoniah, the Cushite queen, wife of Kikianus. And Moshe feared Yahweh the Elohim of his fathers, so that he came not to her, nor did he turn his eyes to her. For Moshe remembered how Abraham had made his servant Eliezer swear, saying unto him, You shall not take a woman from the daughters of Canaan for my son Yitzchak. So, nevertheless, Moses was married to this Cushite woman. Even though he didn't sleep with her, they were married. This brings into play this passage, Numbers 12, 1-2. Miriam and Aharon spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman whom he had married, for he had married a Cushite woman. So they were like kind of gossiping against him. And they said, Has Yahweh indeed spoken only through Moses? Has he not spoken through us also? And Yahweh heard it, and he got mad, really mad that Miriam got leprosy. All right, so that's enough. We'll chapter 74. We're going to skip. This is a reign of different kings through different lands. Chapter 75. We'll read this passage. At that time, in the 180th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, there went forth from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, from the children of Israel, who were all of the tribe of Joseph, of the children of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. For they said the period was completed which Yahweh had appointed to the children of Israel in the times of old, which he had spoken to Abraham. But they were wrong. The time was not done yet. And these men girded themselves, and they each put his man a sword in his side, and every man upon his armor upon him. And they trusted in their strength, and they went out together from Egypt with a mighty hand. Long story short, they go out, and they all get absolutely destroyed, every single one of them except for 10 of them, to return back and tell the story. For this evil was from Yahweh against the children of Ephraim, for they transgressed the word of Yahweh in going forth from Egypt, before the period had arrived, which Yahweh in the days of old had appointed to Israel. So on all these bones, and the slain of the children of Ephraim remained forsaken in the valley of Gath for many days and years, and were not brought to burial, and the valley was filled with men's bones. All right? And this tells us a little bit of what's going on here. Psalm 78. The children of Ephraim, being armed and carrying in bows, turned back in the day of battle. They kept not the covenant of Elohim and refused to walk in his law. Why? Because this evil was from Yahweh against the children of Ephraim, for they transgressed the word of Yahweh in going forth from Egypt before the period had arrived, which Yahweh in the days of old had appointed to Israel. So it's interesting, if you look at commentary for Psalm 78, commentators, Bible scholars have been puzzled at this. They have no explanation for this. Well, it's because it's in Yashar, the book of Yashar. And also let's take a look at the Targums. 13, Exodus 13, verse 17. And it was when Pharaoh had released the people that Yahweh did not conduct them by the way of the land of the Philistines, through that there was that was the near one. So that was the near route. For Yahweh said, lest the people be affrighted in seeing their brethren who were killed in war, 200,000 men of strength of the tribe of Ephraim. So Yashar says 30,000. This says 200,000 men. So, but the same story. Who took shields and lances and weapons of war and went down to Gath to carry off the flocks of the Philistines, because they transgressed against the statute of the word of Yahweh, and went forth from Mitzrayim 3 years before the appointed end of their servitude. They were delivered into the hands of the Philistines, who slew them. Right. So here's a confirming story, and just show you. Oops, that's not a number. When Pharaoh let the people go, Elohim did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, although that was near. For Elohim said, lest the people change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt, when they see all the dead bones of the Ephraimites. So, let's see. Now let's go and finish Exodus chapter 2. So we read up to verse 15. So Pharaoh wants to slay Moses. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. So he fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. So the book of Genesis or book of Exodus, Yah decided to skip the whole story of Cush in here. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters, and they came and drew water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. And the shepherds came and drove them away, but Moshe stood up and helped them and watered their flock. And when they came to Reuel, their father, he said, "How is it that you are come so soon today?" And they said, "A Mitzrite delivered us out of the hand of the shepherds, and also drew water enough for us, and watered the flock." And he said unto his daughters, "And where is he? Why is it that you have left the man? Call him, that he may eat bread." And Moshe was content to dwell with the man, and he gave Moshe Zipporah his daughter. And she bore him a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, "I have been a stranger in a strange land." And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Mitzrayim died, and the children of Yashar sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up to Elohim by reason of the bondage. And Elohim heard their groaning, and Elohim remembered his covenant with Abraham, with Yitzchak, and with Jacob. And Elohim looked upon the children of Yashar, and Elohim had respect unto them. Now, let's take a look at Yashar 76, starting at verse 12. So Moses went forth from the land of Cush and went home and ceased to reign over Cush. And Moses was 66 years old when he went out of the land of Cush, for the thing was from Yahweh, for the period had arrived which he had appointed in the days of old to bring forth Israel from the affliction of the children of Ham. So Moses went to Midian, for he was afraid to return to Egypt on account of Pharaoh. And he went and sat at a well of water in Midian. So here's the same story. Same story. Same story. So Moses related to Reuel that he had fled from Egypt, and that he had reigned 40 years over Cush, and that they afterward had taken the government from him, and had sent him away in peace and honor with presents. And when Reuel had heard the words of Moses, Reuel said within himself, "I will put this man into prison house, whereby I shall conciliate the children of Cush, for he has fled from them." So Moses was in prison for 10 years. Zipporah fed him, and the children of Israel are still in bondage. Let's see. And Pharaoh was inflicted with a plague, and he consulted his sorcerers that if the blood of little children were put into the wounds, we would be healed. Same thing happens with the modern day kings of the earth. I'm not even going to say the thing, but they take the blood of children and use it for all manner of sick things for healing. So they took, of course, the children of Israel's babies to do that. Let's see. This is more the affliction of Pharaoh, and he died. He ends up dying here. So he had 3 sons. He ends up picking one son, Adikam, to be the son. He was a really short guy. His beard hit the floor. He was really ugly and fat, it says. All right, 77. Adikam was 20 years old when he reigned over Egypt, and he reigned for 4 years. In the 260th year of Israel's going down to Egypt did Adikam reign over Egypt, but he continued not so long as to reign over Egypt as his fathers had continued in their reigns. For Malol, his father, reigned 94 years in Egypt, but he was 10 years sick and died, for he had been wicked before Yahweh. Let's see, this is more about Adikam, not really that interesting. So while he reigned, he exceeded in his fathers and all the preceding kings in wickedness, and he increased his yoke over the children of Israel. And he went with his servants to Goshen to the children of Israel, and he strengthened the labor over them, and he said unto them, "Complete your work each day's task, and let not your hands slacken from our work from this day forward, as you did in the days of my father." And it would come to pass, that if you're, verse 14, if you're deficient in your daily bricks, I will put your young children in their stead. The taskmasters of Egypt did so in those days as Pharaoh had ordered them. And whenever any deficiency was found in the children of Israel's measure of their daily bricks, their taskmasters of Pharaoh would go to the wives of the children of Israel and take infants of the children of Israel to the number of bricks deficient, and they would take them by force from their mothers' laps and put them in the building instead of the bricks. Ouch. And whilst their fathers and mothers were crying over them and weeping when they heard the weeping of the voices of their infants in the wall of the building, The taskmasters prevailed over Israel, that the Israelites should place their children in buildings, so that a man placed his son in the wall and put mortar over him, and whilst his eyes wept over him, his tears ran down upon his child. And the taskmasters of Egypt did so to the babes of Israel for many days, and no one pitied or had compassion over the babes of the children of Israel. And the number of all the children killed in the building was 270, some whom they had built upon instead of the bricks, which had been left deficient by their fathers, and some whom they had drawn out dead from the building. And the labor imposed upon the children of Israel in the days of Adikam exceeded in hardship that which they performed in the days of his father. And the children of Israel sighed every day on account of their heavy work, for they had said to themselves, Behold, when Pharaoh shall die, his son will rise up and lighten our work. But they increased their latter work more than the former. And the children of Israel sighed at this, and their cry ascended to Elohim on account of their labor. And Elohim heard the voice of the children of Israel and their cry in those days, and Elohim remembered to them his covenant which he had made with Abraham and Yitzchak and Jacob. And Elohim saw the burden of the children of Israel and their heavy work in those days, and he determined to deliver them. And Moses, the son of Amram, was still confined in the dungeon in those days, in the house of Reuel the Midianite. And Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel, did support him with food secretly day by day. And Moses was confined in the dungeon in the house of Reuel for 10 years. And at the end of 10 years, which was the first year of the reign of Pharaoh over Egypt, in the place of his father, Zipporah said to her father Reuel, No person inquires or seeks after the Hebrew man, of whom you did bind in prison now 10 years. Now therefore, if it seem good in your sight, let us send and see whether he is living or dead. But her father knew not that she had supported him. And Reuel, her father, answered her and said, Has ever such a thing happened, that a man should be shut up in prison without food for 10 years, and that he should live? And Zipporah answered her father, saying, Surely you have heard that the Elohim of the Hebrews is great and awful, and does wonders for them at all times. He it was who delivered Abraham from Ur the Chaldeans, and Isaac from the sword of his father, and Jacob from the angel of Yahweh who wrestled with him at the ford of Yabok. Also with this man he has done many things, and he delivered him from the river in Egypt, and from the sword of Pharaoh, and from the children of Cush. So also can he deliver him from famine, and make him live. And the thing seemed good in the sight of Reuel, and he did according to the word of his daughter, and sent to the dungeon to ascertain what became of Moses. And he saw, and behold, the man Moses was living in the dungeon, standing upon his feet, praising and praying to the Elohim of his ancestors. Just like Joseph, right? And Reuel commanded Moses to be brought out of the dungeon. So they shaved him, and he changed his prison garments, and he ate bread. And afterward Moses went into the garden of Reuel, which was behind the house, and there he prayed to Yahweh's Elohim, who had done mighty wonders for him. And it was that whilst he prayed, he looked opposite him, and behold, a sapphire stick was placed in the ground, which was planted in the midst of the garden. And he approached the stick, and he looked, and behold, the name of Yahweh Sebaot was engraved thereon, written and developed upon the stick. And he read it, and stretched forth his hand, and he plucked it like a forest tree from a thicket, and the stick was in his hand. And this is the stick with which all the works of our Elohim were performed, after he had created heaven and earth, and all the host of them, seas, rivers, and all their fishes. And when Elohim had driven Adam from the Garden of Eden, he took the stick in his hand, and went and tilled the ground from which he was taken. And the stick came down to Noah, and was given to Shem and his descendants, until he came into the hands of Abraham the Hebrew. And when Abraham had given all that he had to his son Yitzchak, he also gave him the stick. And when Jacob had fled to Padan Aram, he took it into his hand, and when he returned to his father, he had not left it behind him. And when he went down to Egypt, he took it into his hand, and gave it to Joseph, one portion above his brethren, for Jacob had taken it by force from his brother Esau. And after the death of Joseph, the nobles of Egypt came to the house of Joseph, and the stick came into the hand of Reuel the Midianite, when he went down to Egypt, and took it in his hand, and planted it in his garden. So it's pretty cool. And this stick, has, it said it was sapphire. It's interesting that we've learned that the Ten Commandments, the tables of stone, was actually sapphire stone. We've learned that the firmament above, that's why it's blue, is sapphire. That the throne of Elohim is sapphire. It's all this blue, and we learn that's why we're supposed to have blue in our tzitzits to remind us of all these things. So praise Yah. All right, so now we're going to go to Exodus 3. Big moment here. Now Moshe kept the flock of Yitro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the backside of the desert, and came to the mountain of Elohim, even to Horeb. And the angel of Yahweh appeared unto him in a flame of fire, out of the midst of the thorn bush. And he looked, and behold, the thorn bush burned with fire, and the thorn bush was not consumed. And Moshe said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the thorn bush is not burnt. And when Yahweh saw that he turned aside to see, Elohim called unto him out of the midst of the thorn bush and said, Moshe, Moshe. And he said, Here am I. And he said, Draw not nigh hither. Put off your shoes from off your feet, for the place whereon you stand is holy ground. Moreover, he said, I am the Elohai. This is the entity speaking out of the fire. I am the Elohai of your father, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, and the Elohai of Jacob. And Moshe hid his face, for he was afraid to look upon Elohim. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Mitzrayim, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows. And I am come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Mitzrayim, and to bring them up out of that land unto a good land, and a large, unto a land flowing with milk and honey, unto the place of the Canaanim, and the Chittim, and the Amorim, and the Perizim, and the Chivim, and the Yebusim. Now therefore, behold, the cry of the children of Yashar is come unto me, and I have also seen the oppression wherewith the Mitzrayim oppressed them. Come now therefore, and I will send you unto Pharaoh, that you may bring forth my people, the children of Yashar, out of Mitzrayim. And Moshe said unto Elohim, Who am I, that I should go unto Pharaoh, and that I should bring forth the children of Yashar out of Mitzrayim? And he said, Certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign unto you, that I have sent you. When you have brought forth a people out of Mitzrayim, ye shall serve Elohim upon this mountain. And Moshe said unto Elohim, Behold, when I come unto the children of Yashar, and shall say unto them, The Elohai of your fathers has sent me unto you. And they shall say unto me, What is his name? What shall I say unto them? And Elohim said unto El Moshe, Ahaya, Asher, Ahaya, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shall you say unto the children of Yashar, Ahaya has sent me unto you. Now, there's a lot of people that will focus in on this verse and say, This is his name. I am that I am. Ahaya is his name. Like a lot of debates or questions, sometimes we just have to keep on reading. So I agree that this is Ahaya, Asher Ahaya, is a title for Elohim. But we have to keep reading. And Elohim said moreover, so he continued to speak unto Moshe, Thus shall you say unto the children of Israel. So this is what you're going to say unto the children of Israel. Yahuwah, Elohai of your fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, the Elohai of Jacob has sent me unto you. This is my name forever, and this is my mention unto all generations. So while Echaya is a title for our Elohim, and it's true, you just have to keep reading one more verse, and it says Yahuwah. Or however you pronounce it. You may say Yahweh or Yahuwah. We pronounce Yahuwah here. We don't make a big contention of it, but just by looking at verse 14 and verse 15, I can see why people will use Ahaya, but we just have to read one more verse and see it's Yahuwah. Go and gather the elders of Yashar together and say unto them, Yahuwah Elohai of your fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, of Yitzchak, and of Jacob appeared unto me, saying, I have surely visited you, and seen that which is done unto you in Mitzrayim. And I have said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Mitzrayim unto the land of the Canaanim, and the Chittim, and the Amorim, and the Perizim, and the Chivim, and the Yebusim, unto a land flowing with milk and honey. And they shall hearken unto your voice, and you shall come, you and the elders of Yashar, unto the king of the Mitzrayim, and ye shall say unto him, Yahweh Elohai of the Ibrim has met with us, and now let us go, we beseech you, 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh Eloheinu. And I am sure that the king of Mitzrayim will not let you go, no, not by a mighty hand. And I will stretch out my hand and smite the Mitzrayim with all my wonders which I'll do in the midst thereof. And after that he will let you go. And I will give this people favor in the sight of the Mitzrayim. And it shall come to pass that when you go, you shall not go out empty. But every woman shall borrow of her neighbor, and of her that sojourns in her house, jewels of silver, jewels of gold, and raiment. And ye shall put them upon your sons, and upon your daughters, and ye shall spoil the Mitzrayim. And Moshe answered and said, But, behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice. For they will say, Yahweh has not appeared unto you. And Yahweh said unto him, What is... Oh, I'm sorry. I actually meant to stop. So, we're getting into chapter 4. Sorry. So, in chapter 3, so who was in the burning bush? 2 Ezra 14, 1-3. On the third day, while I was sitting under an oak, behold, a voice came out of a bush opposite me and said, Ezra, Ezra. And I said, Here, my master. And I rose to my feet. Then he said to me, I revealed myself in a bush and spoke to Moses, when my people were in bondage in Egypt. So it wasn't just an angel. He said, I revealed myself. If you haven't seen the study, Who is the Angel of Yahweh? You can. Here's the written form. And you can also. There's also a video online. Long story short, I believe it's Messiah, the same angel that appears before Joshua and said, "This is holy ground. Take off your feet." He's the captain of Yahweh's host. We know who the captain of Yahweh's host, of course, is Messiah. He's the leader of the army. But there's a lot more to it. So I'd like you to test it for yourself. It's called, on YouTube, it's called Identity, the Angel of Yahweh Revealed, which I think I have it spelled YHWH, the identity of YHWH. Check it out if you'd like to. But that's who I believe is our Messiah speaking to him, speaking to Moses. Let's go to the Targums, chapter 3, verse 14. And Yahweh said unto Moses, He who spake, and the world was, He who spake, and all things were. And he said, This shall you say unto the sons of Israel, I am He who is, and who will be, and who has sent me unto you. Who does that sound like? Messiah. All right, let's keep going. Chapter 4. And Moshe answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, Yahweh has not appeared unto you. And Yahweh said unto him, What is that in your hand? And he said, A rod. And he said, Cast it on the ground. And he cast it on the ground, and it became a serpent. And Moshe fled from before it. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, Put forth your hand, and take it by the tail. And he put forth his hand, and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand. That they may believe that Yahweh Elohai of their fathers, the Elohai of Abraham, the Elohai of Yitzchak, and the Elohai of Jacob has appeared unto you. And Yahweh said furthermore unto him, Put now your hand into your bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said, Put your hand into your bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe you, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign. And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto your voice, then you shall take of the water of the river, and pour it upon the dry land, and the water which you take out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land. And Moshe said unto El Yahweh, O my Adonai. You'll notice, we won't talk about the name stuff anymore. I was just going to say, you notice he didn't call him Ahaya. Call him El Yahweh, O my Adonai, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since you have spoken unto your servant, but I am slow of speech, and of slow tongue. And Yahweh said unto him, Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes the dumb, or the deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I, Yahweh? So Moses is like, I can't even speak well. Why are you picking me? Now, therefore, go, and I will be with your mouth, and teach you what you shall say. And, this is a lesson to any of us. And any of us are like, I'm shy, or I can't speak very well. How could I share your truth, your goodness? Pray about it. You don't think he can give you the right words to say? Or can take away your shyness away from you? I know. I used to be socially awkward. I couldn't speak in front of people. I know. And I prayed and sought him about it. He took it away. And the anger of Yahweh was kindled against Moshe, and said, Is not Aharon the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, behold, he comes forth to meet you, and when he sees you, he will be glad in his heart. And ye shall speak unto him, and put the words in his mouth, and I will be with your mouth, and with his mouth, and I will teach you what you shall do. And he shall be your spokesman unto the people, and he shall be to you instead of a mouth, and you shall be to him instead of Elohim. And you shall take this rod in your hand, wherewith you shall do signs. And Moshe went and returned to Yitro his father-in-law, and said unto him, Let me go, I pray you, and return unto my brethren which are in Mitzrayim, and see whether they be yet alive. And Yitro said to Moshe, Go in peace. And Yahweh said unto Moshe in Midian, Go, return into Mitzrayim, for all the men are dead which sought your life. And Moshe took his woman and his sons and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the rod of Elohim in his hand. And Yahweh said unto Moshe, when you go to return into Mitzrayim, see that you do all those wonders before Pharaoh, which I have put in your hand. But I will harden his heart, that he shall not let the people go. And you shall say unto Pharaoh, thus says Yahweh, Yasharel, Israel, is my son, even my firstborn. And I say unto you, let my son go, that he may serve me. And if you refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay your son, even your firstborn. And it came to pass by the way at the inn that Yahweh, or a messenger, met him and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, surely a bloody man you are to me. So he let him go. And then she said, a bloody man you are because of the circumcision. So this makes it sound like Zipporah is like angry at Moses, like, are you bloody man, this circumcision, I hate it. But that's not actually really what happened. Let's take a little look at Yashar, chapter 78, 7 through 16. In those days, Moshe, the son of Amram, in Midian, took Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel the Midianite, for a wife. And Zipporah walked in the ways of the daughters of Jacob. She was nothing short of the righteousness of Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah. And Zipporah conceived and bare a son, and he called his name Gershom, for he said, I was a stranger in a foreign land. But he circumcised not his foreskin at the command of Reuel his father-in-law. So he listened to Reuel instead of the Torah of Elohim. One little mistake, not say little, but one mistake Moses made. And she conceived again and bare a son, but circumcised his foreskin and called his name Eliezer. For Moses said, because the Elohim of my fathers was my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Pharaoh, king of Egypt, greatly increased the labor of the children of Israel in those days, and continued to make his yoke heavier upon the children of Israel. And he ordered a proclamation to be made in Egypt, saying, give no more straw to the people to make bricks with. Let them go and gather themselves straw as they can find it. Also the tale of bricks which they shall make, let them give each day, and diminish nothing from them, for they are idle in their work. And the children of Israel heard this, and they mourned and sighed, and they cried unto Yahweh on account of the bitterness of their souls. And Yahweh heard the cries of the children of Israel, and saw the oppression with which the Egyptians oppressed them. And Yahweh was jealous of his people, and his hindrance, and their voice, and his inheritance, and heard their voice, and he resolved to take them out of the affliction of Egypt, to give them to the land of Canaan for a possession. And in those days Moses was feeding the flock of Reuel and Midian his father-in-law beyond the wilderness of Sin, and the stick which he took from his father-in-law was in his hand. And it came to pass one day that a kid of the goats strayed from the flock, and Moses pursued it and came to the mountain of Elohim in Horeb. And when he came to Horeb, Yahweh appeared there unto him in the bush, and he found the bush burning with fire, or Yahusha, kind of hidden. But the fire had no power over the bush to consume it. And Moses was greatly astonished at this sight, wherefore the bush was not consumed. So this is all the same. All right, verse 8. And Moses rose up to go to Egypt, and he took his wife and the sons with him. And he was at an inn in the road, and an angel of Elohim came down and sought on occasion against him. So in the Torah it says Yahweh came down and sought an occasion against him to kill him. But this says an angel, not the angel of Yahweh, but an angel of Yahweh came down and sought an occasion against him. And he wished to kill him on account of his firstborn son, because he had not circumcised him and had transgressed the covenant which Yahweh had made with Abraham. For Moses had hearkened to the words of his father-in-law, which he had spoken to him, not to circumcise his firstborn. Therefore he circumcised him not. And Zipporah saw the angel of Yahweh seeking an occasion against Moses, and she knew that this thing was owing to his not having circumcised her son Gershom. So she knew the law. And Zipporah hastened and took off the sharp rock stones that were there, and she circumcised her son and delivered her husband and her from the hand of the angel of Yahweh. And then I think the Targums says something interesting as well. Targums chapter 4. Oh yeah, this is the Moses and his tongue. And Moshe said before Yahweh, O Yahweh, I pray, I am not a man of words, nor ever have been before that did you speak with your servant. For I am of a staggering mouth and of a staggering speech, or lame. I do believe it's because of that coal that he put in his mouth. Verse 20 of the Targums. And Moshe took his wife and his sons, and made them ride on an ass, and returned to the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe took the rod which he had brought away from the chamber of his father-in-law, and it was from the sapphire throne of glory, and weight 40 seahs, and upon it was engraven the set forth great and glorious name by which signs should be wrought before Yahweh by his hand. So the Targums confirm the story of Yashar. And then we're going to read 24 through 26. But it was on the way in the place of lodging that an angel of Yahweh met him and sought to kill him, because Gershom and his son had not been circumcised, inasmuch as Jethro his father-in-law had not permitted him to circumcise him, but Eleazar had been circumcised by an agreement between them two. And Zipporah took a stone and circumcised the foreskin of Gershom her son, and brought the severed part to the feet of the angel, the destroyer, and said, The husband sought to circumcise, but the father-in-law obstructed him. And now let this blood of the circumcision atone for my husband. And the destroying angel desisted from him, so that Zipporah gave thanks and said, How lovely is the blood of his circumcision that has delivered my husband from the angel of destruction. So it's a little different than like, you bloody man, this bloody circumcision. Right? A bloody man you are because of circumcision. So I'm not making fun of this. It's what it sounds like, but it makes Zipporah sound like an angry, bitter woman, which I don't think she was. I think she was a righteous woman of Yah. It's how she even knew to do the circumcision. Otherwise, she'd have been like, what's he doing? Why does he want to kill us? So let's finish up chapter 4, and then we're almost done. We're going to chapter 5. And Yahweh said to Aharon, Go into the wilderness to meet Moshe. And he went and met him in the mount of Elohim. And Moshe told Aharon all the words of Yahweh who had sent him, and all the signs which he had commanded him. And Moshe and Aharon went and gathered together all the elders of the children of Yashar. And Aharon spoke all the words which Yahweh had spoken unto Moshe, and did the signs in the sight of the people. And the people believed, and when they had heard that Yahweh had visited the children of Yashar, and that he had looked upon their affliction, then they bowed their heads and worshipped. All right, now chapter 5 of Exodus. And afterward Moshe and Aharon went in and told Pharaoh, Thus says Yahweh Elohai of Yashar, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, Who is Yahweh, that I should obey his voice, and let Yashar go? I know not Yahweh, neither will I let Yashar go. And they said, The Elohai of the Ivrim has met with us. Let us go, we pray you, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto Yahweh Eloheinu, lest he fall upon us with pestilence, or with a sword. And the king of Mitzrayim said unto them, Wherefore do ye, Moshe and Aharon, let the people from their works? Get you unto your burdens. And Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land now are many, and ye make them rest from their burdens. Right? And so this is make you rest from the rest. So this is talking probably about that Sabbath that Moses instituted and then he revoked. And Pharaoh commanded the same day that the taskmasters of the people and their officers, saying, Ye shall no more give the people straw to make brick as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves. And the tale of bricks which they did make heretofore ye shall lay upon them. Ye shall not diminish aught thereof, for they be idle. Therefore they cry, saying, Let us go and sacrifice to our Elohim. Let there be more work be laid upon the men, that they may labor therein, and let them not regard vain words. And the taskmasters of the people went out, and their officers, and they spoke to the people, saying, Thus says Pharaoh, I will not give you straw. Go ye therefore, get you straw where you can find it, yet not aught of your work shall be diminished. So the people were scattered abroad throughout all the land of Mitzrayim to gather stubble instead of straw. And the taskmasters hasted them, saying, Fulfill your works, your daily tasks, as when there was straw. And the officers of the children of Yashar, which Pharaoh's taskmasters had set over them, were beaten, and demanded, Wherefore have you not fulfilled your task in making brick both yesterday and today as heretofore? Then the officers of the children of Yashar came and cried unto Pharaoh, saying, Wherefore do you deal thus with your servants? There is no straw given unto your servants. And they say to us, Make brick, and behold, your servants are beaten, but the fault is in your own people. But he said, You are idle. You are idle. Therefore you say, Let us go and do sacrifice to Yahweh. Go therefore now and work, for there shall no straw be given to you, yet shall you deliver the tale of bricks. And the officers of the children of Yashar did see that they were in evil case, and after it was said, Ye shall not diminish aught from your bricks of your daily task. And they met Moshe and Aharon, who stood in the way as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said unto them, Yahweh look upon you and judge, because you have made our Savior to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh, and in the eyes of his servants, to put a sword in their hand to slay us. And Moshe returned unto El Yahweh and said, Adonai, wherefore have you so evil entreated this people? Why is it that you have sent me? For since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done evil to this people, neither have you delivered your people at all. So let's read Yashar. So let's see. what I want to read. Oh yeah, so this deliverance. Now this actually, I don't know why I put this here. No, let's just go with Yashar 79, 21 through 31. And when they came to the king's gate, so they're going to Pharaoh, just like we just read in chapter 5 of Exodus. 2 young lions were confined there with iron instruments, and no person went out or came in from before them, unless those whom the king ordered to come, when the conjurers came and withdrew the lions by their incantations. And this brought them to the king. And Moses hastened and lifted up the stick upon the lions, and he loosed them. And Moses and Aharon came into the king's house. The lions also came with them in joy, and they followed them and rejoiced as a dog rejoices over his master when he comes from the field. You just imagine this. The lions are like, just like, happy like dogs, like, hey. And when Pharaoh saw this thing, he was astonished at it. And he was greatly terrified at the report, for their appearance was like the appearance of the children of Elohim. And Pharaoh said to Moses, what do you require? And they answered him, saying, Yahweh Elohim of the Hebrews has sent us to you to say, send forth my people that they may serve me. And when Pharaoh heard their words, he was greatly terrified before them. And he said to them, go today and come back tomorrow. And they did according to the word of the king. And when they had gone, Pharaoh sent for Balaam the magician, and to Jannes and Jambres his sons, and to all the magicians and the conjurers and the counselors which belonged to the king. And they all came and sat before the king. And the king told them all the words which Moshe and his brother Aharon had spoken to them. And the magician said to the king, but how came the men to you on account of the lions which were confined at the gate? And the king said, because they lifted up their rod against the lions and loosed them, and came to me, and the lions also rejoiced at them as a dog rejoices to meet its master. And Balaam the son of Beor the magician answered the king, saying, these are none else than magicians like ourselves. Now therefore send for them, and let them come, and we will try them. And the king did so. Now back to Exodus chapter 6, verse 1. Then Yahweh said unto Moshe, now shall you see what I will do to Pharaoh, for with a strong hand he let them go, and with a strong hand he shall drive them out of his land. And that, my brothers and sisters, is the end of this Torah portion. Don't go anywhere because I have an important announcement. And wow, I did much better. So last year, this lasted 3 hours. I cut it down an hour by just paraphrasing some of the passages and skipping some of the portions in Yashar. But the stuff we read, or the stuff we skipped, I'd go back and read. This whole book is just so amazing, giving you the history. That is, of course, if you care about all the details. And I do, and that's why I continue to read these books and share them with you all. So, Passover is coming up in 3 months. So speaking of the book of Exodus, Passover is coming up soon. We have the Pesach registration event. So it's going to be from April 15th in the morning check-in to the 24th check-out. It's a 285-acre private campground on the Niangara River. This will be a place to camp out. There's only 12 RV camper sites. First come, first serve, but we will leaving a 13th site open for filling and dumping. That way, you can boondock throughout the campground. And, of course, you can camp out with your tent. The weather is typically nice in those days. Maybe rainy, so you're going to bring some rain gear just in case. But it's going to be a lot of fun. Sukkot was probably the most fun I've ever had, and for a lot of people that came. So we're camping out again and doing Pesach and the whole week of unleavened bread. I'm going to leave the link for this sign-up sheet in the description box. Nowhere else. It's not going to be in the comment section. It's going to be in the description box. So if you want to sign up and you want to come. We'd love to have you. We are asking that you be believers in the Most High through His Son and the sacrifice He gave for us, and that you are believers that we are to keep Torah to the best of our abilities. Right? So, with that, let's pray. And we're going to do a couple songs. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, Yahweh Most High, we just come before you, Abba, and bless you and praise you for your living word, which is a lamp to our feet in these last days. Thank you for salvation. Thank you for wisdom and understanding. Thank you for your ruach. Thank you for your righteous rules, Father, that we are to follow, that are a wonder. They're liberty. They're freedom, Father. They're more to be desired than gold, sweeter than honey. Father, we just ask that you continue to give us understanding, because you are the giver of wisdom. And we just want to be with you forever, Father. We ask you, just like the children of Israel cried out to you for all the abominations done around them and the servitude and the yoke of servitude put on them. Father, we ask you to come gather your people one more time out of Egypt. just like it was prophesied in Jeremiah 16 and 23. Gather us, Father. We want to be with you forever. We want to worship you in your tabernacle forever. We want to be your people, Father. We want you to be our Elohim. You are our King. You are our leader. And we are your people. We love you and bless you and praise you in Yahushua's name. Amen. Shabbat shalom, brothers and sisters. We're going to do a couple songs. We're definitely going to do the Song of Moses, especially if you want to come to Passover. You're going to have to know the Song of Moses. You don't have to, but we're going to sing it every night. That was one of the great parts of Sukkot. We sang the Song of Moses every single night. So we'll do that here tonight. Before we do the Song of Moses, let's do Seed of Abraham.
To hear of the promises that Elohim spoke to Abraham. Yet here we stand in a distant land. Our heritage is like sifting sand. Who are we but the distant seed of our forefathers, whom you showed mercy? So remember us in your promises and restore to us your inheritance. Receive us again, just the distant seed of Father Abraham. Host about the ocean of people who have forgotten your master plan to make a mighty nation. Now follow you and your lasting truth, Yah of Israel. Receive us still, Yahuwah Yashar, Yahuwah Yashar, Yahuwah Yashar, finally returning.
I sing to Yahweh, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Yah is my strength and song, and he has become my deliverance. He is my El, and I praise him, Elohim of my father, and I exalt him. Yahweh is a man of battle, Yahweh is his name. He has cast Pharaoh's chariots and his army into the sea, and his chosen officers are drowned in the sea of reeds. The depths covered them, they went down to the bottom like a stone. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has become great in power. Your right hand, O Yahuwah, has crushed the enemy. And in the greatness of your excellence, you pulled down those who rose up against you. You sent forth your wrath, it consumed them like stubble, and with the wind of your nostrils, the waters were heaped up. The floods stood like a wall, the depths became stiff in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I pursue, I overtake, I divide the spoil, my being is satisfied on them. I draw out my sword, my hand destroys them. You blew with your wind, the sea covered them, they sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, O Yahuwah, among the mighty ones? Who is like you, great in Kodeshah, awesome in praises, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. In your kindness, you led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you guided them to your Kodesh dwelling. Peoples heard, they trembled. Anguish gripped the inhabitants of Pelasheth. Then the chiefs of Edom were troubled, the mighty men of Moab. Trembling grips them, all the inhabitants of Canaan melted. Fear and dread fell on them by the greatness of your arm. They are as silent as a stone, until your people pass over, O Yahuwah. Until the people whom you have bought pass over. You bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, in the place, O Yahuwah, which you have made for your own dwelling. The meek die your hands have prepared. Yahweh reigns forever and ever.
The